I didn't cry when I saw my husband picking out an expensive iPhone for another woman. Instead, I smiled and pressed a single button on my own phone, credit card blocked. In a matter of seconds, his life began to crumble in front of his mistress, in the middle of the mall, and in the face of his own false pride. When he cursed at me, the old woman, I laughed because there was one thing he didn't know. Everything he wore, everything he prided himself on, everything he called his own, was mine. That night, I walked away without looking back. And this is the story of how a wife quietly took back everything, without a single shout, without a single shred of mercy. Hello, how are you all? I hope you're in good health and always blessed with fortune. Thank you for stopping by the Life Has a Story channel. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and write in the comments where you're from. Okay, here is the story. The polished marble floors of the exclusive shopping center in Beverly Hills reflected the light from crystal chandeliers hanging majestically from the high ceilings. Among the crowd of fashionably dressed shoppers, Derek strode with a wide gait and his chin held high. He felt as if every pair of eyes was on him, admiring the designer casual suit that hugged his frame and the scent of Creed Aventus cologne worth hundreds of dollars that wafted with his every move. Clinging to his left arm was a young woman in a fire-engine red bodycon dress that showcased her every curve. Brielle, an Instagram model who had been Derek's secret plaything for the past 2 months, smiled broadly, occasionally flicking her long hair over her shoulder. Derek felt on top of the world. He savored the sensation of being a man of means. At home, he might just be the husband of Eleanor, a woman he considered boring, too busy with her business, and starting to show her age. But here, with Brielle, Derek felt like a king. He was the provider, the hero, the one with the power. Today, he intended to prove that power with a gift Brielle had been begging for all week, the latest, top-of-the-line iPhone Pro Max with the largest storage, newly released in the United States. They stepped into the crowded Apple store. The line of customers snaked through the brightly lit space. Most of them were just asking questions or looking at the display units. Derek snorted softly, casting a disdainful glance at a group of teenagers taking selfies in front of the store's glass facade. With an arrogant gesture, he bypassed the regular line and walked directly to the priority service counter. He felt entitled. He wasn't the kind of person who needed to waste time queuing for an item that cost more than some people's cars. "Babe, what color do you want? Titanium black or the gold?" Derek asked, his voice deliberately raised to ensure those around him could hear. Brielle squealed softly, her eyes sparkling as she gazed at the rows of luxurious phones in the display cases. "I want the gold, honey. The 1 terabyte, so I can fit lots of endorsement videos," she answered flirtatiously, her finger pointing at the glass. Derek nodded firmly and turned to the female employee standing politely behind the counter. "Miss, get me the 1 terabyte gold. 2 of them, 1 for her, 1 for me. And be quick about it," Derek commanded bluntly. He didn't even ask the price. To him, a price tag was just an irrelevant number. The employee smiled professionally, though slightly irked by Derek's condescending tone. "Of course, sir. Please wait a moment while I get them from the stockroom." While they waited, Derek wrapped an arm around Brielle's waist, enjoying the envious stares from other shoppers. "After this, we'll go to that new rooftop restaurant that just opened. Order whatever you want." "Don't even look at the prices," he whispered. Brielle nodded enthusiastically, already imagining the stream of luxurious Insta stories she would post today. Life with Derek felt so easy and glamorous. Soon, the employee returned with 2 neatly sealed phone boxes. "The total comes to $3,800, sir. Will you be paying in installments or in full?" In full, Derek cut her off quickly, as if offended by the offer of a payment plan. "I don't do credit." With a theatrical flourish he had practiced, Derek reached into his suit pocket and pulled out a leather wallet with a European designer logo. He extracted a sleek, jet-black credit card, an American Express Centurion card that gleamed under the store lights. The card was his ultimate status symbol, the key to the limitless access that funded his lavish lifestyle. Derek placed the card on the glass counter with a confident tap. The employee inserted the card into the terminal. Derek tapped his fingers on the counter, whistling softly, while Brielle was already busy photographing the phone boxes to show off on her social media with the caption, "th/u hubby." But the sound that came from the machine was not the whir of a printed receipt, but a long, grating beep. The employee's brow furrowed. She tried the process again, swiped the card one more time, waited a few seconds, and again came the beep of rejection. "I'm sorry, sir," the employee said hesitantly. The transaction was declined by the bank. The arrogant smile on Derek's face vanished, replaced by a mixture of confusion and offense. "What? That's impossible. That card has no limit. Your machine must be broken or the network is down," he snapped. His voice began to rise, drawing the attention of people waiting behind them. "We've tried twice, sir." The message says, "Do not honor." "Perhaps you could try another card," the employee offered, trying to remain polite despite her growing discomfort. Derek's face flushed a deep red. He felt a hot wave of embarrassment creep up his neck. Brielle stopped taking photos and looked at him with a questioning gaze. "Derek, why was it declined?" "You said it was unlimited," Brielle whispered, her tone growing impatient. "Just a second, babe. This must be some stupid mistake by the bank's system," Derek deflected quickly. He snatched his card back aggressively, then tried another, a platinum card. He handed it to the cashier. There was a moment of silence. Then, another long beep. "Declined again, sir," the employee said, her voice a little firmer this time. The line behind Derek started to murmur. He could hear a stifled laugh from the group of teenagers he had sneered at earlier. "All style, no substance. Can't even pay," someone muttered from the back. Derek's blood boiled, his shame morphed into explosive anger. He couldn't be humiliated like this, especially not in front of Brielle and these lowlifes. With a hand trembling with emotion, Derek fumbled for his phone. He knew only one person could fix this. Eleanor, his wife. She must have forgotten to pay the bill, or there was some administrative error made by her secretary. Derek dialed Eleanor's number furiously, already imagining how he would berate her for embarrassing him in public. The line rang. Once, twice. "Hello." Eleanor's voice was calm, a stark contrast to the panic in the store. "Hey, what the hell are you doing at home?" Derek screamed immediately, no longer caring about his image. "Why are all my credit cards being declined? I'm at the Apple store trying to pay, and I'm being humiliated like some kind of bum. Turn the cards back on right now, you useless old woman." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. No apology, no panic or fear that Derek was used to hearing from his wife. Instead, he heard a small laugh, crisp, light, and chillingly cold. "Oh, Derek!" Eleanor's voice was so casual, as if she were discussing the afternoon weather. "The card isn't broken. The machine isn't broken either. I'm the one who blocked it. And not just the credit cards, but your access to the bank accounts, the investment portfolios, and all the assets you've been enjoying." Derek fell silent, his mouth slightly agape. His rage-filled mind struggled to process the information. "What do you mean? Don't joke around. I need to pay for this right now. Brielle is waiting." "Ah, yes, Brielle." Eleanor said the name with a flat tone. "Send her my regards. Tell her that if she wants that iPhone, she should buy it herself. Because starting this second, not a single penny of my money will ever flow to finance your prostitute." Derek's heart felt like it had stopped. A cold sweat began to form on his temples. Eleanor knew. His quiet, unassuming wife knew everything. "Eleanor, don't mess with me. I'm your husband. Your assets are my assets too." Derek tried to bluff, though his voice was starting to sound desperate. "Husband?" Eleanor laughed again, this time with a sharper edge. "You seem to have forgotten, Derek. According to our prenuptial agreement, you own nothing. You came into my house with only the clothes on your back, and you will leave the same way. Enjoy your new reality, Derek. A life with zero net worth." "Wait, Eleanor, just listen." The line went dead. Derek stared at his phone screen with a blank expression. Thousands of miles away, in the International Departures Lounge at LAX, Eleanor lowered her phone from her ear. The woman wore an elegant cream-colored Burberry trench coat. A Louis Vuitton suitcase stood beside her. Her face showed no trace of tears. She looked as serene as someone who had just thrown out a piece of trash that had been rotting in her house for too long. With a slow, deliberate movement, Eleanor opened the SIM card slot on her phone. She took out the tiny chip, the number that, for 10 years, had been active 24/7 just to serve Derek's whims and commands. She looked at it for a moment, then snapped it in two with a satisfying crack. Rihanna walked to the nearest trash can, dropped the broken pieces inside, then turned and strode towards her departure gate. The flight to Paris was about to board, taking her to freedom and leaving Derek standing frozen in the middle of a Beverly Hills mall, holding a credit card no more valuable than a piece of toy plastic. The atmosphere inside the red two-door sports car was suffocating, a stark contrast to the smooth purr of its powerful engine. Derek gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. His breath came in ragged gasps, trying to contain a mix of rage and unbearable shame. In the passenger seat, Brielle sat with her arms crossed and her face set in a scowl, staring out the window, refusing to look at the man who had just failed to buy her dream phone. "Babe, listen to me," Derek said, breaking the silence. He tried to sound authoritative, but a tremor of panic was in his voice. "It's just a technical issue. That woman, Eleanor, she's just an old wife looking for attention. You know, insecure woman syndrome, afraid of being left by her husband. She blocked the cards just to make me come home and beg, but she's dead wrong if she thinks I'll bow down to her." Brielle snorted, still not looking at him. "Getting attention by humiliating you in public? Do you realize how people were looking at us? Like we were thieves. My friends will laugh their asses off if any of them saw that." "No one would dare laugh at you," Derek cut in quickly, pressing the accelerator harder, the Porsche weaving through the traffic on the freeway. "I promise. Tomorrow, as soon as I get home and teach Eleanor a lesson, I'll buy out the entire Apple store for you. We'll see. She'll be on her knees, crying and begging for my forgiveness for being so presumptuous." Derek continued to rant for the entire drive, constructing a narrative in his head where he was the victim and Eleanor was the villain who needed to be punished. He imagined a scenario where he would break down the door, scream at Eleanor, and force her to reactivate all his financial access on the spot. He felt confident because, for years, Eleanor had always been silent. She was a submissive woman who never argued, let alone fought back. Derek was certain that her act of blocking his cards was just a momentary bluff. The luxury car finally turned into an exclusive residential area in Bel Air. Towering gates with classic European architecture greeted them. Derek felt a little calmer as he saw the familiar surroundings. This was his domain. The two-story pillar-fronted house on the main thoroughfare was a symbol of his status as a successful man. At least, that's what he believed, conveniently forgetting the fact that the property deed was in Eleanor's name, an inheritance from her father. Derek pulled the car up to the automatic garage gate. Out of habit, he lowered the window and placed his thumb on the fingerprint scanner mounted on the gate pillar. Normally, a green light would flash, and the heavy iron gate would slide open to welcome the master of the house. But this time, the indicator light blinked red rapidly, accompanied by a repetitive buzzing sound. "Damn it," Derek swore. "She must have changed the security system, too." He tried again, pressing his thumb harder. Still red. He switched to the 6-digit pin on the keypad, their wedding date, which usually worked as a backup, but it was completely unresponsive. The small digital screen above the keypad simply displayed, "Access denied." "Are you serious? You actually own this house?" Brielle sneered, her patience wearing thin. "First the cards don't work, now you can't even get into your own home. What's next? The car breaks down?" "Shut up!" Derek snapped, making Brielle jump. He slammed the car door and got out, his face crimson with rage. He walked to the gate, shaking the black iron bars while yelling, "Eleanor, open up! Don't play these stupid games with me. Open the gate, or I'll tear it down!" Silence. There was no answer from the house, which was completely dark. Usually, the garden lights would turn on automatically at dusk, but tonight, the house looked dead, as if it were uninhabited. Suddenly, the sound of heavy footsteps came from the direction of the community security post about 50 yards away. A uniformed security guard, Gus, who usually greeted Derek with a deep, respectful bow, was now approaching with a stiff expression and a look of pity. In his hands, he held a clipboard and a stack of large black plastic bags. "Mr. Sterling," Gus called out, his tone flat. The usual honorifics and friendly smiles he offered for a tip were gone. "Gus, good, you're here," Derek commanded, pointing a finger at the guard's face. "My wife changed the gate password. You have a master key, right? Open it now. I need to get in." Gus didn't move. Instead, he positioned himself to block Derek's access to the gate. "I'm sorry, Mr. Sterling. You can't enter. Your access has been completely revoked." "What do you mean? This is my house." Derek took a step forward, intending to grab the guard's uniform, but Gus calmly stepped back and held out a photocopied paper clipped to his board. "This is no longer your house, sir," Gus said firmly. "Mrs. Sterling sold this property a week ago to a third party. The keys were handed over yesterday afternoon. The new owners will begin renovations next week. Legally, this house is vacant, and you are prohibited from entering, as it would be considered trespassing on private property." Derek froze, his eyes wide as he read the letterhead of the notary public on the paper. The date on the deed of sale was a week ago, precisely when Derek was on a business trip to Hawaii. So, while he was having fun with another woman, Eleanor was busy packing up her life and selling the roof over their heads. This must be a fake. Eleanor can't sell the house without my signature," Derek shouted, his hand trembling as he held the paper. "The deed is solely in Mrs. Sterling's name, sir. It was a direct inheritance. Your signature was not required," Gus replied bluntly, as if he had been coached to answer that very question. "And this." Gus pointed to a pile of 5 large black trash bags lying on the grass near the security post. "Mrs. Sterling left a message. All of your personal belongings have been packed. Your clothes, shoes, and the few items you bought with your own money, which, it turns out, weren't many, are all in there. Everything else, bought with her money, has either been auctioned off or donated to charity." Derek stared in horror at the plastic bags. Trash bags. His designer clothes, his expensive suits, his collection of shoes were now piled up like restaurant waste on the side of the road. His pride hadn't just been knocked down, it had been trampled flat. From inside the car, Brielle lowered her window completely. Her eyes looked with disgust at the pile of black plastic bags, then shifted to Derek, who stood frozen like an idiot. "So we really can't get in?" she asked, her voice cold and alien. Derek turned, his gaze empty. Reality was beginning to seep into his consciousness, cold and painful. His lavish house was no longer his. His castle had crumbled, and all that remained for him were 5 trash bags filled with the remnants of his illusory glory. He had no place to go home to. Derek's anger reached a boiling point. With ragged breaths that sounded like a wounded bull, he grabbed the black plastic bags containing his clothes from the grass. He no longer cared about the mix of pity and amusement in Gus's eyes. Roughly, Derek dragged the bags to the trunk of his sports car, but the car's trunk was tiny, designed for style, not for carrying the burdens of life. Derek was forced to stuff the remaining bags into the back seat, right behind where Brielle was sitting. A musty smell from the haphazardly packed clothes filled the car's luxurious leather-scented cabin. Brielle covered her nose with her hand, a look of utter disgust on her perfectly made-up face. "Derek, this stinks. Where are you planning to take all this garbage?" Brielle protested as Derek slammed his door and got back behind the wheel. "Quiet, Brielle. These are my designer clothes, not garbage," he snapped, starting the engine. The roar of the exhaust sounded fierce, as if mirroring its owner's emotions. "We're going to a 5-star hotel now. We'll get the most expensive suite. To hell with that house. Tomorrow, I'm hiring the best lawyer in LA to sue Eleanor. Who does she think she is, kicking me out like that?" Derek stomped on the gas, the tires screeching against the asphalt as he aggressively turned the car around, leaving the gated community behind. He needed an escape. He needed a cool, comfortable place to clear his head and plan his counterattack. In his mind, he still felt he had power. He was still Derek Sterling, the respected, successful businessman. At least, that was the image Eleanor had built for him all these years. The car sped down the streets of Los Angeles, which were becoming congested with rush-hour traffic. Derek expertly weaved past other vehicles, ignoring the long honks from irritated drivers. He merged onto the 405 freeway, pushing the car into the fast lane. The speed gave him a small sense of the control he had lost. The blurred city lights became the only calming sight. But the calm didn't last long. Right around the Sepulveda Pass, amidst the chaotic flow of heavy traffic, the car's dashboard suddenly began to flash erratically. The check engine light glowed red, followed by the air conditioning system shutting down abruptly. "Ugh, why is it so hot?" Brielle complained, fanning her face. Before Derek could answer, the steering wheel felt heavy, incredibly heavy. The gas pedal he was pressing suddenly became unresponsive. The RPM needle dropped to 0. The engine died completely. Silence. There was only the remaining momentum carrying the car forward before it finally coasted to a complete stop. Luckily, Derek managed to jerk the wheel toward the shoulder, though the car was still partially jutting into a traffic lane, provoking angry honks from buses and trucks speeding past. "Damn it! What now?" Derek slammed his fist on the steering wheel in frustration. He tried pressing the start-stop button repeatedly, but there was no response. The car was dead, as if its life had been forcibly unplugged. In the rearview mirror, a yellow tow truck with blinding orange rotating lights appeared, closing in fast. The truck wasn't just passing by. It cut across traffic and stopped directly in front of Derek's car, blocking any escape. 2 burly men in orange vests got out. They didn't look like highway patrol officers coming to help a stalled car. Their faces were hard, their gazes sharp and direct. One of them knocked loudly on the driver's side window. Derek rolled it down a little, sweat beading on his forehead from the dead A. "See." "What?" "My car broke down." "You don't have to knock so hard. Call a mechanic." The man didn't smile. He held out a red folder. "Mr. Derek Sterling? We're from the leasing company. We have orders to repossess this vehicle, effective immediately." Derek's heart sank. "Leasing? What leasing? Are you trying to scam me? This car is paid off. I bought it with cash 2 years ago," Derek yelled, his voice hoarse with panic. His pride was under assault again, this time on the side of a dusty freeway. The man opened the folder and pointed to the information inside. "Sir, as you can see here, the vehicle is registered to Eleanor Sterling Enterprises. The lease payments are 3 months overdue. As this is a company asset, and the CEO, Mrs. Eleanor Sterling, has confirmed the cessation of payments and authorized the repossession of the unit, we are executing it today. The GPS and kill switch were activated remotely from our central office. That's why your engine died." Derek's eyes widened as he read the document. All this time, Eleanor had told him the car was a birthday gift, bought in cash. It turned out she had leased it under her company's name, both as a tax write-off and, of course, so she would always maintain full control over the asset. Derek was just the user, not the owner. No, this can't be," Derek hissed. "Please step out of the vehicle, sir, and take your personal belongings. We need to take the car now," the man ordered, his tone leaving no room for argument. "But where am I supposed to go?" "We're in the middle of the freeway," Derek pleaded, but the second man had already opened the passenger door and was gesturing for Brielle to get out. With trembling legs, Derek exited his prized car. Brielle was also forced out, looking completely shocked and clutching her handbag tightly. Her face was pale, witnessing such a humiliating ordeal. "Derek, what is going on? You said you were rich. Even your car is getting repossessed?" Brielle whispered sharply, her eyes now looking at Derek with a drastically different expression. It was no longer a look of adoration, but one of judgment. Derek couldn't answer. He was busy pulling the black trash bags of his clothes from the trunk and back seat. The scene was utterly ironic. A man in an expensive suit, standing on the hot, dusty shoulder of a freeway, surrounded by plastic trash bags, while his luxury sports car was being hooked up to a tow truck. "Wait, don't take it yet. I can pay. How much is the past due balance? I'll transfer it now," Derek yelled desperately at the repo men. One of them glanced over his shoulder and chuckled. "The total arrears plus penalties is about $15,000, sir. We got a report from headquarters that your cards were declined at the mall, so let's not have any more drama, okay?" Derek fell silent. Checkmate. He realized Eleanor's financial systems were so integrated that he was now completely exposed, with no protection whatsoever. Within minutes, the car was lifted. The tow truck slowly drove away, taking with it the last symbol of status Derek had. It left Derek and Brielle standing on the side of the freeway, buffeted by the strong winds from passing semi-trucks, the road dust beginning to cling to their sweaty faces. Derek hugged his plastic bags tightly, his only remaining possessions, while Brielle began to take a step back, away from him. Fine dust from the hot asphalt blew into their faces, mixing with the thick black smoke from the exhaust pipes of container trucks that roared past just feet from where they stood. The cacophony of horns and engines on the freeway made their ears ring. For Brielle, this was hell. She glanced down at her high heels, now dull with dust, then looked at Derek. The man who just hours ago had seemed like a prince now looked pathetic. Sweat soaked his expensive shirt, leaving large stains on his back and under his arms. His hair was greasy and disheveled from the wind. Worst of all, he was clutching 3 large black trash bags to his chest, as if they were the last treasures on earth. Brielle took a few steps back, creating a tangible distance between them. She felt a wave of disgust, not just from the sweat and dust, but from the aura of failure now radiating strongly from Derek. Her sharp survival instincts, honed from a life lived off the luxury of others, began to scream, "Run!" Brielle's hand dove into her purse, retrieving the smartphone that had been vibrating non-stop. She thought it was texts from friends about a party later that night. But when the screen lit up, her eyes widened. Her Instagram notifications had exploded. A major celebrity gossip account had just posted a viral video. On the screen, Brielle saw herself and Derek at the Apple Store earlier that day. Someone had secretly recorded the entire humiliating moment. The video's title was written in bold, sensational letters. "Wannabe whale husband yells at wife on phone, gets cards declined for being a mooch." Brielle's heart pounded. She quickly opened the comments section. Thousands of netizens had already flooded the post with scathing remarks exposing Derek's identity. "Wait, isn't that Eleanor Sterling's husband? The real estate mogul? Wow, acts like a king, but he's just a parasite. Oh my God, I feel so bad for the side piece. Thought she landed a billionaire. Turned out to be a leech. The car, the house, everything belongs to the wife. He's just a pretty face. Bet he's crying in a corner somewhere now." Brielle's face went from pale to beet red with humiliation. Her reputation was ruined. In her social circle, she was known as a model who only dated high-quality men. Now, she was a national laughingstock for being duped by a man who didn't even have control over his own wallet. Derek wasn't just broke now. He was the biggest fraud Brielle had ever encountered. Without wasting another second, Brielle's manicured fingers flew across the screen, opening a ride-sharing app. She ordered a premium service not for Derek, but to save herself from this God-forsaken place. Derek, who had been muttering curses while kicking at loose gravel, finally noticed Brielle's change in demeanor. He saw her preoccupied with her phone, ignoring his presence. "Babe, what are you doing? Calling us a ride?" "Good," Derek said, his tone still attempting to project authority, though it was tinged with a pathetic sense of relief. "Get a nice car, okay? I don't want to ride in some compact with all this stuff." Brielle slowly lowered her phone, looking at Derek with a coldness he had never seen before. Her gaze was empty, devoid of any last trace of admiration or attraction. "I ordered an Uber for myself," she replied flatly. Her language had changed. No more babe or honey, just a harsh, transactional tone. Derek was taken aback, his brow furrowed in confusion. "What do you mean? You're going to leave me here? On the side of the freeway?" "Yeah. What am I supposed to do? Become homeless with you?" she shot back. She shoved her phone in his face, showing him the viral video. "Look at this. The whole country is laughing at us. You said you were a successful businessman. You said your wife was just some boring housewife. It turns out you're nothing but a leech, Derek. A parasite. Everything you have belongs to your wife." Derek tried to deny it, reaching out to grab Brielle's arm. "Don't believe that cheap gossip. It's just jealous trolls. We can get through this, Brielle. You said you loved me, right? We can face this together. I promise I'll get back on my feet. I'll sue Eleanor and take what's mine." Brielle slapped his hand away as if it were contaminated. She backed away further, maintaining a safe distance. "Love?" Brielle laughed, a cynical, painful sound. "Wake up, Derek. I'm a realist. I need my spa days. I need my designer bags. I need to eat at nice restaurants. I was with you because you could give me all of that. If you're broke, what use are you to me? I'm not Eleanor, willing to stick by you from the bottom. I wanted the new iPhone, not to be dragged into poverty on the side of a freeway holding trash bags. Those words hit Derek harder than the declined credit cards. Brielle's brutal honesty demolished the last remnants of his ego. There had never been any love, only a transaction. And now that Derek had defaulted on payment, the transaction was void. A sleek black sedan, Brielle's Uber, pulled over on the shoulder nearby. It was her escape ticket. "Goodbye, Derek. Good luck with the whole homeless thing," Brielle said dismissively. Without another look back, she hurried to the car, opened the door, and slipped into its cool, air-conditioned interior. Derek could only stand there, frozen, his mouth shut tight. He watched the sedan pull away and merge back into the flow of traffic, leaving him utterly alone. Surrounding him now was only dust, the roar of traffic, and the 3 black trash bags that were his only faithful companions. The sun began to set, casting a long, lonely silhouette of Derek, who looked small and fragile against the harsh reality that had just slapped him awake from a long dream. The Los Angeles sky had turned a deep, inky black. The city lights, which usually looked beautiful from behind the window of a luxury car, now felt glaring and mocking. Derek limped out of the nearest freeway exit. His feet, accustomed to the soft leather of Italian loafers, were now blistered and raw. Those shoes were designed for walking on plush office carpets or hotel marble, not for trekking 3 miles on rough asphalt and cracked sidewalks. Every step was agony, made worse by the weight of the 3 large trash bags he had to shift from one shoulder to the other. Those bags contained the remnants of his glory, suits, silk shirts, and dress pants that now felt heavier than his sins. A choking thirst made his throat feel like sandpaper. He stopped in front of a brightly lit 24-hour 7-Eleven. The blast of cold air that escaped when the automatic doors opened felt like heaven. His old instincts took over. He walked in, grabbed a cold bottle of water and a sandwich, and headed toward the cashier with confidence. But his steps came to an abrupt halt just a few feet from the counter. Reality hit him harder than the tow truck had. He had no way to pay. His credit and debit cards were useless pieces of plastic. He still had his phone, but his mobile banking and digital wallet apps were all linked to the same accounts, the ones Eleanor had frozen. With a trembling hand, Derek searched his pockets, hoping for the miracle of a stray dollar bill. He checked his right pocket, his left, even the inner pocket of his suit jacket. Nothing. Empty. For years, Derek had prided himself on his cashless lifestyle. He often mocked people who carried cash as old-fashioned and impractical. Now, that very lifestyle was killing him. He didn't even have a quarter to his name. Overwhelmed with shame, Derek placed the water and sandwich back on the shelf. Noticing the suspicious glare of the store clerk, he walked out of the 7-Eleven with his head down. His stomach growled loudly, demanding to be filled, but he had to swallow his own bitter saliva instead. He sat back down on the cold sidewalk, leaning against a utility pole. In his desperation, Derek pulled out his phone. The battery was at 15%. This was his last lifeline. He started scrolling through his contacts, looking for the names of his high society friends, the people he used to treat at exclusive clubs, the ones who always praised his success. His first call was to Randy, his golfing buddy. The line connected. "Hey, Randy. Man, I'm in a bit of a jam," Derek began, trying to sound casual, though his voice was hoarse. "Left my wallet at home, cars in the shop. Could I borrow a little cash? Or maybe crash at your place tonight?" There was a moment of silence, then a scornful laugh. "A jam or karma? Bro, I saw the video. It's everywhere. Crazy, man. Turns out you've been your wife's little pet all along." "Sorry, Derek. My wife would kill me if I hung out with a fraud. Don't call me again." The line went dead. Derek's blood ran cold. He tried another number. Josh, the owner of a luxury car dealership. The line was busy. He tried again. It went straight to voicemail. Blocked. One by one, the friends who had once fawned over him were now shutting their doors. They were friends in good times and the cruelest judges in bad. No one wanted to take in the trash that had been thrown out by Eleanor, the woman who, it turned out, held all the power in their elite circle. They were afraid of being associated with him, or worse, being ostracized by the surprisingly influential Eleanor. As the night deepened, the streets grew quiet. Derek walked aimlessly until his legs gave out. He stopped in front of a closed strip mall. On the dark, dusty terrace of a vacant storefront, among cigarette butts and grime, Derek collapsed. He arranged his black plastic bags into a makeshift, uncomfortable bed. His $1,000 suit jacket now served as a barrier between his skin and the cold tile floor. He curled up in a fetal position, hugging his knees. Mosquitoes began to buzz in his ears, biting his soft skin that had never known hardship. He slapped his own cheek, killing one that was already full of his blood. Hunger gnawed at his stomach, a sharp pain that spread through his body. But instead of reflecting or feeling remorse for his actions, Derek's ego swelled to protect his sanity. He didn't feel guilty. He felt wronged. In the cold Los Angeles night, with an empty stomach and a shattered ego, Derek's mind began to weave a narrative of hate. "This is all Eleanor's fault," he whispered into the darkness, his voice laced with poison. "That snake. She must have been planning this for years. She set me up. She wanted to humiliate me. Just you wait, Eleanor. You think you've won? I'm going to sue you. I'll take my half of your fortune. I'm your legal husband." That delusion was the only blanket that kept him warm that night. He closed his eyes, imagining himself winning in court and becoming rich again, while Eleanor wept at his feet. With that burning vengeance, Derek finally fell asleep on the storefront terrace, beginning his first night as a homeless man in the city he once thought he had conquered. The morning sun, filtering through the gaps in the storefront's awning, stung his skin, forcing Derek to open his heavy, swollen eyes. His body ached as if it had been run over. Sleeping on a hard tile floor with a plastic bag for a pillow was not a restful experience for a man used to sinking into a king-sized bed with silk sheets. An unpleasant odor immediately assaulted his senses, a mix of sweat, street dust, and the remnants of expensive cologne that now smelled rancid. Derek got up slowly, wincing as he held his stiff back. His stomach twisted with a sharp hunger that had transformed from a mere annoyance into real physical torment. But above the hunger, one thought dominated his mind: revenge. He would not let himself be destroyed like this. He was sure the law was on his side. As a legal husband, he felt he had an absolute right to half the wealth he had enjoyed for so long. Limping, he dragged his plastic bags to a nearby gas station. In the foul-smelling, wet-floored public restroom, Derek performed a pathetic morning ritual. He splashed his face with tap water, tried to comb his greasy hair with his fingers, and changed out of his sour-smelling shirt into a fresh suit he pulled from one of the bags. Although the Armani suit was now a wrinkled mess, Derek felt a sliver of his confidence return as he put it on. He looked at his reflection in the cracked mirror. His face was grimy, his eyes were red from lack of sleep, and a rough stubble was growing on his jaw. But he puffed out his chest, trying to convince his reflection that he was still Derek Sterling, the successful businessman. "Just you wait for my comeback, Eleanor," he hissed at the mirror. "You think you can throw me away like trash? I'm going to take everything." After walking for nearly 3 miles under the hot, smog-filled Los Angeles sun, Derek finally arrived at an old, faded building in East LA. The sign out front read, "Legal Aid Society of Los Angeles, free consultation for low-income residents." The irony was not lost on him. The man who just days ago held a black card now had to wait in line with laid-off factory workers and victims of predatory loans to get free legal representation. Derek entered the crowded, stuffy waiting room, cooled only by a lazy, oscillating wall fan. He looked with disgust at the people around him, feeling like a diamond lost in a pile of coal. When his name was called, Derek walked in with his chin held high, as if he were entering a boardroom, not a cramped 10x 10-foot consultation booth. Inside, a young lawyer, probably fresh out of law school, sat behind a wooden desk piled high with files. His name tag read, Aaron. Aaron looked slightly surprised by Derek's appearance. A man in a wrinkled designer suit that smelled of sweat, yet carried himself like a CEO. "Please have a seat, sir. How can we help you?" Aaron asked politely. Derek threw himself into the plastic chair and placed his hands on the desk in an intimidating manner. "I want to sue my wife. It's a big case. spousal abandonment, and misappropriation of marital assets. I want her in jail, and I want my rights restored. Aaron furrowed his brow, picking up a pen and a notepad. Can you tell me the chronology of events, sir? Were you kicked out? It was more than just being kicked out, Derek cut in passionately. She unilaterally blocked all my financial access while I was on a business matter. She changed the locks on our mansion, sold assets without my knowledge, and left me stranded on the street without a dime, and we are still legally married. This is a clear violation of the law, isn't it? Abandonment. Derek deliberately omitted the parts about his affair, or the fact that the assets were Eleanor's inheritance. In the delusional narrative he had constructed, he was the victim of a cruel, ungrateful wife. The assets you're referring to, were they acquired during the marriage? Was there a prenuptial agreement? Aaron asked carefully, trying to separate fact from his client's overflowing emotions. Derek scoffed dismissively. Of course, during the marriage. We've been married for 10 years. All that wealth was the result of our hard work together. I supported her. I gave her social status as my wife. As for a prenup, Derek paused, vaguely recalling a thick document he had signed without reading, too busy fantasizing about Eleanor's money. Oh, that was just some old formality. It can't possibly be valid when a husband is abandoned like this. The law must have a humanitarian side, right? Derek leaned forward, his eyes locked on the young lawyer. Listen, Aaron, my wife's assets are worth hundreds of millions. A mansion in Bel Air, sports cars, investment portfolios. I'm demanding a 50-over-50 split of marital property. Half of that is mine by right. If you can win this case for me, I'll give you a percentage of my share. We're talking millions of dollars, Aaron, far more than your salary in this dump. Derek's confidence was so immense that he failed to see the absurdity of his offer, coming from a man who couldn't even afford a bottle of water. He felt he was conducting a high-level business negotiation. To him, the law was just a tool to extort Eleanor, and this legal aid office was his stepping stone back to the top. I want this lawsuit filed today. Write this down. A complaint for division of assets and a criminal complaint for infliction of emotional distress. Make her regret she ever messed with Derek Sterling, he commanded, tapping his index finger on the desk as if dictating to his personal assistant. Aaron sighed deeply, looking with pity at the man before him who was clearly living in denial. But as a matter of procedure, he continued to jot down Derek's rantings. In Derek's eyes, those notes were his ticket to victory. He smirked, imagining Eleanor's pale face when she received the court summons. He had no idea he was digging his own grave deeper. The small room at the legal aid office felt even more cramped when the front door opened. It wasn't Eleanor who appeared, as Derek had imagined in his victory scenario. Instead of his wife arriving with a tear-streaked face to beg for forgiveness, Derek saw a middle-aged man in a perfectly tailored tuxedo black suit, with gleaming leather shoes and a crocodile leather briefcase that probably cost more than the renovation of this entire building. An expensive, intimidating scent of sandalwood and leather instantly filled the room, overpowering the prevailing odors of must and sweat. Aaron, the young legal aid lawyer, reflexively stood up with an awkward, respectful posture. He recognized the man. Mr. Vance. Arthur Vance, Aaron mumbled in disbelief. Anyone in the legal world knew the legendary corporate lawyer who specialized in titanic corporate cases and whose hourly rate was billed in foreign currency. Derek, who didn't know the man but felt threatened by his powerful aura, remained seated arrogantly. He crossed his arms over his chest, trying to hide the sweat stains on his shirt. Where's Eleanor? Why did she send an errand boy? I want to talk to her directly, not some courier, Derek snapped. The man named Arthur Vance didn't even crack a smile. He looked at Derek with the cold, detached gaze of a scientist examining bacteria under a microscope. Without wasting time on pleasantries or a handshake, Vance sat in the plastic chair opposite Derek, opened his briefcase, and pulled out a thick, navy blue file. Mrs. Sterling has no time to entertain your delusions, Mr. Sterling. Vance's voice was deep, calm, and razor-sharp. I am here to offer you two simple choices. Back down and disappear, or proceed and rot in prison. Don't threaten me. Derek slammed his fist on the table, making Aaron jump. I know my rights. Marital property. Half of Eleanor's wealth is mine. We were married for 10 years. Vance let out a short, bored sigh. With an elegant motion, he slid the first page from the file across the desk to Derek. Fact number 1. Please read it. This is a copy of the prenuptial agreement you signed 10 years ago, exactly 3 days before your wedding reception. Derek squinted, reading the document. He remembered that moment. He had been drunk on the prospect of marrying a tycoon's daughter. He felt it was beneath him to read the fine print of a thick contract, afraid of looking greedy or calculating. He had signed it with a flourish. Now, the contents of that document were strangling him. Article 4, Section 1, Complete Separation of Assets. Vance read aloud without looking at the paper. All assets acquired by the wife, whether through inheritance, gifts, or business profits in the wife's name during the marriage, are the sole and absolute property of the wife. The husband has no claim to a single cent. Your signature is right there, Mr. Sterling. Notarized, and we have a video recording of the signing to prove you did so of your own free will, without coercion. Derek's face turned ashen. But I worked. I helped her. I'm entitled to compensation. Helped? Vance let out a cynical chuckle and produced a second set of documents. Fact number 2. We have conducted a full audit of all financial flows. For 10 years, Mrs. Sterling transferred a monthly allowance to your personal account with the memo line reading, employee salary, or spousal stipend. Legally, this establishes your position not as a business partner or investor, but as a subordinate or a dependent receiving a wage. You did not build wealth, you merely enjoyed the facilities. Derek was speechless. He had never paid attention to the memo lines on the transfers, only the large numbers. It turned out Eleanor had been preparing for this day since the first day of their marriage. His wife's intelligence, which he had always dismissed as boring, was in fact a silent, deadly trap. "That's manipulation!" Derek yelled, a cold sweat now pouring down his face. "I'll sue anyway. The court will have a conscience." "Be my guest," Vance challenged calmly. He then pulled out the final set of documents, which contained high-resolution photographs. Photos of Derek and Brielle at hotels, photos of Derek with other women from years past, screenshots of lewd text conversations, and credit card statements from Eleanor Sterling Enterprises that Derek had used to buy luxury bags for his mistresses. Fact number 3. Vance's voice turned into a palpable threat. "If you dare to file a lawsuit for marital assets, at that very moment we will countersue you on 2 counts. First, adultery, for which the evidence is more than sufficient and will be used to demonstrate bad faith. Second, and this is what will ensure you grow old in a cell, felony embezzlement. You used a corporate credit card for personal and illicit activities. The total damages to the company are recorded at over $4 million. The maximum sentence is 10 years in federal prison." The room fell deathly silent. Aaron, the legal aid lawyer beside Derek, slowly pulled his hands back from the table and closed his notebook. He knew this case was over before it had even begun. "Mr. Sterling, if the evidence is this strong, my advice as your counsel is to stand down. Your position is indefensible," Aaron whispered softly. Derek was trembling violently. All his courage and arrogance crumbled instantly, shattered into a million pieces by that stack of papers. He realized he wasn't fighting a weak wife. He was up against a concrete wall, built with intelligence and meticulous preparation over a decade. So, Vance closed the thick file with an echoing thud. He leaned forward, staring into Derek's terrified eyes. "What is your choice? Sign this affidavit relinquishing all claims and offering a formal apology, then leave Los Angeles and never show your face to Mrs. Sterling again. Or, I call the police right now to come pick you up." Derek's throat felt tight. The image of iron bars and a horrific prison life flashed before his eyes. He had no money, no friends, and now he knew he had no future if he fought Eleanor. With a hand that shook uncontrollably, Derek took the pen Vance offered. There were no more shouts, no more curses. In a painful silence, Derek signed his letter of surrender. He had officially lost everything, not because it was stolen, but because he was too foolish to realize he had only ever been a passenger on someone else's luxury yacht. Vance took the paper, placed it back in his briefcase, stood up, and straightened his suit. Without a single word of farewell, the expensive lawyer turned and walked out, leaving Derek slumped in the hard plastic chair like a lifeless piece of meat. The wall clock showed 2 a.m., 3 months before the humiliating incident at the mall. The spacious, air-conditioned master bedroom was silent except for the soft snores of Derek, fast asleep on his side of the bed. Eleanor sat upright on her side, holding her husband's still-active iPad. The screen's light reflected on her face, illuminating not tears, but a terrifying coldness. That night, a message notification on Derek's iPad changed everything. A short text from a contact named Brielle is less than 3 included a photo of airline tickets and a hotel reservation in Hawaii for the following week. Eleanor didn't scream. She didn't wake Derek up to demand an explanation or beat his chest hysterically like women in soap operas. Her heart had pounded for a moment in shock, but the pain of betrayal quickly morphed into a profound sense of disgust. The love she had nurtured for 10 years, the patience she had shown when Derek was building his career with her support, evaporated in an instant. Eleanor placed the iPad back on the nightstand with a slow, deliberate motion, as if setting down a ticking time bomb. She looked at her husband's face. The face she once adored now looked like the mask of a repulsive parasite. In the silence of that night, Eleanor didn't plan a simple divorce. She planned an execution. To her, Derek's infidelity wasn't just a matter of the heart, it was an insult to her intelligence and an abuse of the privileges she had provided. Derek wasn't just an unfaithful husband. He was a bad investment that needed to be liquidated immediately. The next morning, after Derek left for work, which Eleanor now knew was a pretense to meet his mistress, Eleanor did not go to her office. She called Arthur Vance, her late father's trusted lawyer. They met in a private room at an exclusive Japanese restaurant, far from the prying eyes of the LA social scene. In front of Vance, Eleanor did not present herself as a fragile victim. She laid out a list of assets, bank transfer records, and security footage she had been quietly collecting since her suspicions first arose a month ago. "I don't want a messy public spectacle right now, Mr. Vance," Eleanor said calmly, sipping her green tea. "I want him to be destroyed slowly, without him even realizing it's happening. I want him to wake up one day and find he has nothing left to stand on." Vance nodded, impressed by his client's composure. "What are your instructions for the assets?" "Sell the house," Eleanor commanded coldly. "Find a buyer who can make a fast cash offer. I don't care if it's slightly below market value. The important thing is that the deed is transferred before the 20th of next month. Move all cash and investment holdings to my offshore account in Switzerland, which Derek cannot access. As for the cars, let him keep using them, but stop the lease payments effective today. Let the leasing company repossess them on the road." The following days were the greatest performance of Eleanor's life. She continued to act the part of the dutiful wife, preparing Derek's breakfast, even smiling sweetly when he left for the day. But behind that smile, Eleanor worked like a machine. She oversaw the notary handling the sale of the house while Derek was out playing golf. She packed her own valuable belongings piece by piece, sending them to a secret apartment she had just leased, leaving Derek's things untouched so he wouldn't suspect a thing. The large house slowly became an empty shell, but Derek, too consumed by his own ego, never noticed. The climax came a week before day. Derek excitedly announced he was leaving for a business trip to Hawaii, a trip with Brielle. Eleanor walked him to the front door, adjusting his collar one last time. "Be safe, darling. I hope your business goes well," Eleanor said softly, a double meaning in her words that Derek completely missed. The moment Derek's car disappeared down the driveway, Eleanor's smile vanished. She went inside, called the head of community security, and gave firm instructions. "Gus, next week, right after I leave for the airport, change all the gate access codes. If Mr. Sterling comes home, do not let him set foot on the property. I will leave the new ownership documents with you at the security post." The night before she flew to Paris, Eleanor sat in her home office, staring at her laptop screen. Displayed was the management portal for the supplementary credit cards held by Derek. Her mouse cursor hovered over the permanently block button. Eleanor knew that the next afternoon, Derek would take Brielle to the mall to buy an expensive gift, following the pattern of credit card bills she had studied for years. With a single, light click, she pressed the button. The card's status changed to inactive. There was no regret, no hesitation. She then closed her laptop, took a deep breath, and felt an immense sense of relief. The weight of the parasite that had been feeding off her life for 10 years was finally gone. Eleanor stood up and walked toward her packed suitcase. Tomorrow, while Derek was panicking over his declined cards, she would be sipping champagne at 30,000 feet, leaving her rotten past behind in the trash heap of Los Angeles. The best revenge, Eleanor thought, wasn't screaming in anger, but letting your opponent realize that without you, they are nothing. The crisp autumn air in Paris felt cool against the skin, carrying a signature blend of freshly baked croissants, roasted coffee beans, and the expensive perfumes of pedestrians strolling along the Boulevard Saint-Germain. At an outdoor table at the legendary Café Les Deux Magots, Eleanor sat with her legs elegantly crossed. Her appearance today was a silent but deadly statement against her past. Gone were the frumpy house clothes and tired, makeup-free face Derek used to complain about. Eleanor wore a camel-colored trench coat from Burberry, paired with a silk scarf in an abstract print draped softly around her neck. Her hair, once hastily tied back while she managed the household, was now cut in a chic, shoulder-length bob with honey-brown highlights that framed a face that looked a decade younger. Her skin glowed, not from heavy foundation, but from the absence of the stress that had eaten away at her for the last 10 years. The most effective anti-aging cream, it turned out, wasn't a $1,000 night cream, but the removal of a toxic, demanding husband. Eleanor's slender hands, adorned with a simple but elegant diamond ring on her middle finger, not her ring finger, moved deftly across the screen of her iPad Pro. She was reviewing the monthly financial reports from her real estate company in LA. The company's profit graph showed a sharply rising green line. Eleanor smiled faintly. Since she had cut off the flow of funds to Derek and stopped financing his hedonistic lifestyle, company expenses had dropped by nearly 20%. All this time, she had been unknowingly harboring the biggest financial leak in her own life. She sipped her cappuccino slowly, savoring the soft milk foam without being rushed. Her mornings used to be filled with Derek shouting about a missing sock or complaining that his breakfast was too salty. Now, the only sounds she heard were the soft jazz from the cafe's speakers and the murmur of conversations in romantic-sounding French. This silence was a priceless luxury. Suddenly, a shadow fell over her table. Eleanor looked up, slightly lowering her sunglasses. A tall, well-built Caucasian man in a tailored charcoal gray suit stood near her table with a polite smile. He looked to be her age and exuded an aura of success and mature confidence, a world away from the shallow playboy persona Derek often projected. "Excuse me, madame," the man said in English, with a charming French accent. "I apologize if I am disturbing you. I noticed you are reading an Asian real estate market report on your iPad. As it happens, I am also an investor in that field. Would you mind if I asked your opinion on that chart?" Eleanor didn't answer immediately. She studied him with a sharp but polite gaze. Derek had always told her she was a stiff, uninteresting woman who was boring to talk business with. He constantly belittled her intelligence. Yet here, in one of the world's fashion capitals, a stranger was interested in her mind, in her abilities, not just her appearance. "Please," she answered calmly, gesturing to the empty chair opposite her without seeming cheap. "But my time is limited. I have a spa appointment in an hour." The man let out a rich laugh, a genuine sound that appreciated her directness. They engaged in a brief but substantive conversation about investments and stocks. Eleanor countered every argument intelligently, her eyes shining with confidence. She realized something important in that moment. She was still very attractive. She still possessed the charm, intelligence, and allure that Derek had tried so hard to extinguish to make her feel insecure and dependent on him. He had deliberately made her feel small so he could feel big. 30 minutes later, the man excused himself, leaving his business card on the table. He was the CEO of a renowned European architectural firm. He kissed the back of her hand respectfully before leaving a gesture of appreciation Eleanor hadn't received from her own husband in years. Eleanor glanced at the card, then slipped it into her Hermès Birkin bag. She had no intention of calling him anytime soon. She was still enjoying her honeymoon with freedom too much. She signaled the waiter for the bill. When the waiter arrived with a small tray, Eleanor took out her black Centurion card, the same type Derek had once flaunted, and placed it on the tray. The difference was, when the waiter swiped her card, a short, crisp beep was immediately followed by a smoothly printed receipt. Transaction approved. Eleanor smiled broadly, a smile that reached her eyes. On the other side of the world, Derek was probably scrounging for scraps of pity. But here, Eleanor was striding out of the cafe with her chin held high, walking down the cobblestone streets of Paris, ready to conquer the world once again as a whole, strong, and unbeatable woman. Thick, greasy smoke smelling of burnt bacon and old fryer oil filled the back alley behind a Greasy Spoon diner in East Los Angeles. In a dark, grimy corner, a thin man in a stretched-out t-shirt squatted before a mountain of dirty dishes. That man was Derek. The hands that were once only accustomed to holding the steering wheel of a sports car or a crystal wine glass were now wrinkled and rough, submerged in cheap dish soap for 10 hours a day. His once perfectly manicured nails were now black with the caked-on remnants of other people's meals. "Hey, Donnie, stop daydreaming! We've got a pile of plates here. Customers are waiting," the shout of the diner owner, a gruff old man with a towel around his neck, thundered through the alley. Derek flinched, his shoulders tensing in fear. "Yes, sir." "Sorry, sir," he mumbled, quickening his movements, scrubbing at the stubborn grease on a melamine plate. The arrogance was gone. The chin held high was gone. 3 months of life on the streets had eroded Derek's ego down to the marrow. After being thrown out by the lawyer and rejected by all his friends, Derek had truly hit rock bottom. With no original diplomas left in Eleanor's safe and likely burned by now and no real work experience other than being a kept man, washing dishes was the only way he could avoid starvation. At 2 a.m., the diner finally closed. Derek got his break, his body aching in every joint. He sat leaning against a utility pole behind the diner, ignoring the stench of rotting garbage from the nearby sewer. His trembling right hand reached into the pocket of his grimy pants and pulled out his only remaining possession, his smartphone, its screen shattered into a spiderweb of cracks from being dropped while he slept on the street. Though cracked, the phone still worked. Derek piggybacked off the free Wi-Fi from a 7-Eleven across the street. His old habit hadn't died. His curiosity about Eleanor's life was a poison he drank every night. A small part of his heart hoped she was suffering, hoped she missed him, or hoped her business was failing without him. His rough index finger swiped across the screen, opening Instagram. Eleanor's account was public. The latest post had been uploaded just 5 minutes ago. Derek's eyes froze, his breath catching in his throat. Displayed on the cracked screen was a breathtaking photo of Eleanor. The background was the magnificent Eiffel Tower at night, sparkling with golden lights. But the tower wasn't the focus. Eleanor was. She wore an elegant, silk evening gown in a deep maroon that clung to her slim, healthy frame. Her face was turned to the camera with a joyful, uninhibited smile that Derek had never seen in their 10 years of marriage. It wasn't the polite smile of a submissive wife. It was the victorious smile of a free woman. Derek zoomed in. Eleanor looked radiant, glowing, and young. There were no lines of exhaustion, no shadow of sadness. In her hand, she held a glass of champagne. But it wasn't just the photo that made Derek's chest tighten. It was the caption below it. The words were short, but pierced his heart more sharply than a shard of glass. Real life begins when you finally take out the trash. Cheers to freedom. Cheers to a self-worth fully restored. Trash. That one word echoed in Derek's head, over and over. Trash. All this time, Derek had considered himself the greatest gift to Eleanor. He felt she was lucky to have him because he was handsome and charismatic. But tonight, beside a stinking sewer, reality slapped him with brutal force. Eleanor hadn't lost anything. She had gotten rid of a burden. He was the trash. He was the filth that had been clogging up her happiness. And now that he was gone, she was shining brighter than ever. Hot tears began to fall, tracing paths through the grime on his cheeks. They weren't tears of anger like before, but tears of a painful, belated regret. He looked at his own filthy hands, then at the elegant image of Eleanor on his phone screen. The distance between them was no longer just Los Angeles to Paris. It was the distance between heaven and earth, between a diamond and mud. Derek began to sob softly, his shoulders shaking. He realized there would be no second chance, no more luxury, no more Mr. Sterling to be respected. All that was left was a lifetime of regret for having once had a queen who loved him, whom he had thrown away for a fleeting ego boost and hollow lust. In Paris, Eleanor closed her Instagram app without bothering to read the comments. She slipped her phone into her clutch and stood up from the balcony of her luxurious apartment. The night air of Paris caressed her face. She wasn't thinking about Derek. That name had vanished from her memory like dust washed away by rain. Eleanor stepped back into the party, embracing her future with a light step and a full heart, leaving her dark past far, far behind, in a diner alley in Los Angeles, where the trash truly belonged.